did it.
Nice. How's it going?
No, I think I need step-by-step instructions for Instagram.
You did great. We got you there.
Yeah. Hi there.
How are things?
Good. Getting ready. Getting closer to the end of summer.
Yeah. Did you get some time away or any?
I don't know if you can call quarantine time away, but
Yeah, that's a good point. Well played.
But we had some good adventures. Maybe that's better.
Yeah, I imagine it's got to be a tough time. Are you home? Are the kids being homeschooled at all during this time, or?
Well, I have one of my kids in tutoring in math and reading through the summer, like kind of when we're in town. And, but, you know, lots of time off and exploring other things that are interesting. And of course, media frenzy, like I'm sure most parents are experiencing a lot of TikTok and whatever they're on. I try not to look too much, just enough and not too much.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So can you introduce yourself just for the people that don't know?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. My name is Jessie, and I'm a parent of 3 dyslexic children, and I'm dyslexic as well. I grew up in the Seattle area and moved down to Vancouver 15 years ago, and just trying to get by and trying to get my kids through school and graduated and off to college. That's around the corner for me next year. We're in the college season for my oldest child, so looking at college essays and SATs and applications and where do you want to live and what do you want to do?
I read the snippet of the story that you sent, which is just, I mean, gave me goosebumps just reading it. It's just an amazing story. There's so many layers to it.
Sure.
Let's start with you though. Like,
sure.
You had your own journey of trying to figure out literacy from the time you were 4 years old?
Yeah. So I'm a September birthday. I was born September 1st. And of course, I was a very active and capable child, very verbal, and did great in preschool where I was very play-based. And I was kind of put into a class and I made friends. And so I think back then that year, the way school started was Labor Day. And I was literally turned 5 the day after school started. And I wanted to go where my friends were going. So I went to school. And of course, daycare was an issue for my parents as well. So I started kindergarten and really struggled in kindergarten. And then in the 1st grade, I had a really amazing teacher named Miss Lofton. If you're out there watching, thank you. And she was the first one in a parent-teacher conference, and that would be, let's see, 1983 said the words dyslexia to my parents during a parent-teacher conference. And I know, like, who said that in 1983? But she did. And I think she was an Apple of the Year Award teacher in Washington State, and that was a thing back then, that she was an inner-city school teacher. And you know, from there, I went to special ed for literacy and went through the special ed system. And I think moved schools in the 4th grade. Hated school. Hated it. Everything about it was horrible except recess. I couldn't understand. And PE, of course. PE was super fun because I was really good at that. And my parents put me in athletics, competitive athletics, really young. I was a gymnast. So I started that in kindergarten, and I was doing that 5 days a week. I don't know, at that age, 4 or 5 hours a day. It was kind of like a solution to daycare. Like instead of putting somebody in daycare, put them in sports, which worked pretty well. Except that, you know, it was also like a really hard to go to school all day and then go to like structured training all evening.
Right.
Yeah, it was a lot, and I was very successful in that. And then in 3rd grade, I moved to a new school. It was a brand new school with a really great principal, and I got a really amazing 4th and 5th grade teacher that looped named Mr. Brightstein. And at that year in those trainings, I was training like 6 hours a day. for by the time I was in 4th or 5th grade, and so they made an arrangement for me to take like every other Wednesday off for homeschool. And really, I went to like every other week I went to tutor for reading. And then I like slept in and went to lunch with my mom and had, which is probably exactly what I needed. And, but those years, those elementary school years were really intense and really horrible. And I was really sad and very angry kid. And, but I did well in my classes with my teachers. Like I made friends with my teachers, which was probably really key. Definitely turned most of them into allies for me. But it wasn't a happy time. And then went to a really rough, pretty violent middle school in urban Seattle. And that was horrible. I pretty much hated that. But I think, you know, during all of these years, I learned some really key things. I learned to make really motivating relationships with most of my teachers, and I learned to make them want to help me instead of making an enemy out of them. And I learned to use my peers to my advantage, both socially, but also like academically, learning mostly from my peers and figuring out who of my friends could help me with learning the things I needed to learn when I couldn't learn it from a teacher, and definitely who, you know, I could help. I'm really kinesthetic. I'm one of these learners too, is almost entirely kinesthetic. If I can't do it, I'm probably not going to learn it. Don't tell me about it. I can't remember the steps. You know, I need show me and let me do it. That's all I wanted. That's all I want to do.
Right.
So of course, you know, testing and dates and spelling were horrible. And I think you probably understand a little bit about that. But I think that's normal for a lot of dyslexic people who are kinesthetic and athletic. Like, oh my God, please let me do my spelling with jumping jacks. That would be best for me.
Well, so that's what I wanted to tap into that in a minute. So from an athletic standpoint, how did that carry you all the way, like through, like, what did you?
Well, you know, in the 80s, gymnastics wasn't a happy place. Like going to training in the gym, it was mostly Soviet era run gyms that were like really strict and like very regimented. I think what I learned that carried over from athletics was to learn to love self-directed drills, like, and to learn to drill yourself, and not in a remote, like do a million times on a math paper, but like I did all my math, you know, starting in middle school all the way through high school, backwards and forwards. So I'd work it for math problem forward, and then I'd work it backward, or I'd read the same books 15, 20 times on my own. You know, I'd pick a book. If I was supposed to read it, I just would stay up and I'd read it. And I love reading. I'm a big reader, actually, and that has helped me. And I love stories. And so even though literacy was like learning to read was really hard, I was motivated, and I'm pretty competitive. So I hated being last. I hated being last in learning, and I'm a smart person. So like all my friends were really smart, and they were all like the 5-star people on the spelling charts. I'm sure you remember those, or learning charts. Yeah. Yeah. And so what I learned was to like cheat and like sneak other people's stars off and like put them next to my name. So I just less horrible. But also, like, I didn't want to be the one in the worst reading group. So I was very motivated intrinsically to not be last. Exact. It's kind of what my dad would say. Don't be last, Jessie. So I tried hard not to be last.
Just try to keep that in the back of the mind, right?
Yeah.
So was there ever a full turning point for you, or was it always just this kind of grind it out
the whole way? Everything was hard. Of course, the things I'm good at, you know, relationships, people, talking, oral presentations got me through a lot. saying what I know, asking for help, showing up early, staying late, I remember I had a math teacher my freshman year, a Mr. Bender, and he just was like a regular math teacher in the 90s. And I just showed up one day and everybody was doing well. And I'm like doing all the work that they're doing and I'm not doing well. And I just looked at him and I was like, you have to teach me so I can learn. And I'm not learning. You have to help me. And so he said, okay, come before school. So I did. And I showed up every day before school. And he used to like let me sit next to him during the tests and like, okay, you know, because sequential memory is an issue and that working memory was really a struggle by that time. So like he would help me remember what was the next thing, even though I could do the next thing, remembering what was the next step was a real challenge. So, you know, some of these teachers like rose to the occasion, I would say. I wouldn't say that most of them were knowledgeable about dyslexia or understood how it impacted you, not just in the literacy capacity, but in throughout your whole learning experience in school. And you know, just it really helped me to, even though, you know, it's hard to be friends with all the smart people because you never kind of perform as good as they do.
Right.
You know, you learn the tricks, you learn to turn in every assignment, and you learn to do all the extra credit, and you learn to like get them to want you to be better, you know. And I did that. I think those are kind of old school tricks. As far as learning to read went, you know, just I never quit. You know, you never quit. So that's kind of how I did it.
Yeah, you have that spirit about you for sure.
Yeah.
And if you're joining us and you have questions, please drop a line for us. We're with the International Dyslexia Association Oregon branch, talking to Jessie. It's got an amazing story. And then on top of that, now you have kids that are...
Yeah, I'm 3 for 3.
3 for 3.
3 for 3. I knocked them all out of the park. So I'm never last. You got to get all of them.
So, I've met your kids and they're amazing.
Yeah.
But if you could talk about maybe some of the experiences you've had with them through the education system, I think some of the parents on the line would like to hear about that.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. Well, I knew I was dyslexic and I had a dyslexia diagnosis by the 1st grade. So I knew it was there. And I knew coming from a neurotypical family that it was likely. And I guess I kept my eyes peeled. And I have 3. My oldest one is a senior this year, and he like slipped by me. I knew he had his own things, and he reminded me a lot of my brother. So I kind of like, okay, maybe you're like your uncle. And then I had a daughter, Kimia, who's been on here.
Yeah.
And I knew by 3 years old, I could tell when we started her in preschool. And everybody sat down to circle, you know, like they had practice write your name on the dotted line. And she just was like, refused to do it. She just scribble on top of it and walk away. And and I was like, uh-oh. and then by the next year when she was 4 in preschool and everybody was sitting for circles, she'd just leave. And I think she was listening, but she just was not interested in books at all, or words on print at all, or writing at all. She was interested in all these other things. And then my youngest one, her profile is more of an anxious and ADHD, and her dyslexia is a lot less than her siblings, although now we're handling that better. You can see it peeking through. And that is one of the things about having kids with dyslexia or non-neurotypical, because, you know, you kind of solve for one problem and then the other ones just like magnify, you know. And so it's never like you can quit. It's always like there's a new problem to be solved or, you know, struggle to get around. And so, you know, all of them have had interventions starting early on with reading supports at 5, before kindergarten. I was like, oh, let's get them going, and started them in private tutoring. And for my older son, you know, he got all the way to 5th grade. I can't believe he got by me all the way to 5th grade. And then I had my middle daughter test, and I was like, okay, we need a clear diagnosis and, you know, a clear, we need it down on paper, essentially. We need it for her for the future. And I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do one, I might as well do everybody. And that's kind of my theory. Like, okay, let's just self-rex and make sure that everybody's cool. And then the other ones popped up. And I was like, okay. And so we started with dyslexia and Barton tutoring. And my oldest son, Iman, is a senior this year. I think he's done some events with you guys. Yeah. He is a really successful reader, but is a really slow processing. And so just kind of addressing all of the things and the money, you know, just
right.
We have the resources and to help them at this time. And so just kind of, I think as a dyslexic person, you learn to outsource the things you don't do well. You know, I'm not going to really probably be the best literacy tutor for them. I mean, I would actually suck at it. They know more about decoding than I do. I don't read whole words. I decode words. I read whole words. I don't read every word. They're probably like actually functionally better readers, even though I probably read at a higher level because I have more experience.
Right.
You know, getting them in and then finding a community and then starting to help them advocate for themselves and to articulate their needs and to help them learn to get what they need out of the people that are around them.
So that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about, because Shelby, who's with the International Dyslexia Association Oregon branch and is like known as this world-renowned recruiter of finding these students and kind of taking them through the advocacy approach. And I mean, to get 3 students in one family, that had to be a big win for her.
It's gold mine.
So yeah. How much Burgerville did she bring you?
Not a lot. I think Shelby is an amazing advocate and a great tutor. And one of the things that I've really valued about her approach to the Barton tutoring system has been her flexibility as an individual, and the fact that, you know, she came to my IEP meeting with my kids. Like that's pretty amazing. And, you know, I would want to give back as much as I'm getting, you know, all around if I can. And I think for kids, advocating, you know, everyone says advocate, advocate, advocate. What does that look like? And, you know, they have really concrete examples like, you know, go to get a business card made when you go to high school and basically give it to all your teachers and, you know, learn about your challenges, but also learn about your strengths and be able to articulate them and be able to ask for help. But I think the most important thing that you can do is to, as a student, almost open yourself up, make yourself vulnerable to your teacher and tell them what you need. And most of the time, I think well, not most of the time, but a lot of the time, I think they really do want to help you, but they don't know how. And so if you can help guide them, then that's really what you're giving them in terms of self-advocacy. My challenge as a learner growing up was I didn't exactly always know what I needed from them. I just knew it didn't work. And I didn't have another strategy to tell them, and they didn't have another strategy to give me. So we were at an impasse. But now we have all of this new research and all of these new strategies and all of these new manipulatives and all of these, you know, online resources, which is light years beyond, you know, schooling and education, you know, 30 years ago. And if kids can use those technology and can inform as they go, then I think they'll get a lot more out of their schooling experience.
Yeah. So you and I had a similar kind of background in terms of that. I didn't always know what I needed. It was more like people were trying to figure out what I needed versus being able to articulate it. But I think what's so cool about the advocacy piece of what you're talking about is when you give the students the tools to talk about what it is they need, what is going to get them successful, because that's going to apply beyond.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's a lifetime skill, really.
Absolutely.
And if they're constantly learning and they're constantly kind of hip to the things that are new and improved, then they will know more later on about what will help them. And you know what? Having a great circle of people to support you is really key. It makes it less lonely. It makes you feel like you can ask for help when you need it. And like I said, I'm a big proponent of outsourcing. If I can't do it, I need a friend who can. Like before I sent you that bio, I definitely sent it to my girlfriend. I was like, you better look at this.
I do the same. It's always good to have a proofreader.
Yeah.
No, it is really important. Is that the one thing, if you were to give advice to the parents on the line right now, like as they're trying to figure this out, as they're working with their students or their kids, like what would be that piece of advice? Would it be that, or is there other things that you've found?
I think what you're asking sounds like tell me something that's concrete. And I think I'm not a concrete person in a lot of ways. I think the most important thing is to learn to be adaptable and to learn to figure out, what you need out of somebody. And if you know that, you're gonna grow more. And if you get stuck in I can only do it one way or they can only give it one way, then you're only going to run into walls again and again, as opposed to, really trying to solve a problem from multiple angles. I don't think there's ever really one solution. There's not one dyslexic person. I have 3 dyslexic kids and they all have 3 dyslexic profiles that are different. Not one of them is the same. So all the things that they need are different. And if I tried to apply one thing to all 3 of them, that wouldn't be useful. What do they need? And not only what do they need, but like as they grow and develop as people and as students, those needs are going to change. What they needed at 5 is different from what they need at 17. And there's common threads that run through them, a struggle for literacy. And certainly when your 12th grader is trying to read Shakespeare, that's a whole nother ballgame than when you're trying to read Hop on Pop, or I had to read like Dick and Jane. You guys remember Dick and Jane? That was my primer for reading for my tutor. It was horribly boring. But it's probably had a lot of good sight words in there. But I think adaptability and perseverance, those are the things that get you through, and the drive, trying to figure out how to motivate your kids to keep grinding away. Because, some kids flip. My son flipped. I had a flip. The switch came on one day and I could do it. And I don't know what happened. I don't know. It wasn't one thing. It just one day it worked. But I also have a kid that didn't flip. And she has to grind it out every day and every time. And sometimes she chooses to grind it out. And sometimes she chooses to make it easier on herself and plug into audiobooks. And that's her choice. I'm not going to try and tell her. I can say, hey, maybe you want to try it this way. And she might say no. Or she might say, yeah, I'm over it. I'd like to listen to the audiobook of 1812, the pandemic, blah, 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 for English 8th grade. But, giving your kids choices and just saying, here's your palette of resources. What do you want? When they're younger, you get to direct that more. And as they get older, you don't get to direct that as much. So those are important.
Adaptability and perseverance. That is powerful stuff right there. I want to thank you for sharing your story with us and
sure.
taking time on a Monday night. And I'm sure there's other things that you got going on with 3 kids. And
no. They're all in their bedrooms. I can talk all night.
But we so appreciate it. And awesome that you're part of the International Dyslexia Association Oregon branch and that the students are part of the advocacy group and supporting other students. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Yeah, thank you. And it's great that you're doing these and getting messages out. I think the more our people are connected, the more we'll succeed.
Definitely. Thank you so much and have a great night.
Bye, guys.